It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rob, and this is my State of the Dungeon address. Today is the address for the game that took place on the 15th of July, the year 2021. The game is Mighty Protectors, and all players were in attendance. The action picked up in the middle of combat. The group was in the United Nations building in New York City trying to hold off a group of other gifted who were interested in basically kidnapping the delegates of the United Nations, which, yeah, they're a target. So the group determined they were going to fight, but they kind of spread out. Sentinel thought he would go and check out the scene at the battle-suited legions that were coming out at the time. And for the most part, the rest of them stayed in the area of the building, and with Sentinel's super speed, it's not very difficult for him to get back. But Muscles and Rook had gone up onto the roof, where they had discovered there were a whole lot of spider drones. And the others were staying down, well, okay, mostly Cyghost was by the entrance. Bulwark decided he was going to go intangible and go inside and scout out, which is a very good use of his ability. So Bulwark was also the one who found out that the Gifted made their entrance by teleporting into the Grand Plaza room. And immediately thought for the safety of the delegates by putting up a shield. Well, that didn't serve him so well because he got paralyzed and or knocked out. And the rest of the group slowly came back to get involved in the fray. As things had started, Rook was in bad shape. He had tangled with a gifted named Salvo, whose special ability is explosives. He can make explosives of all sorts, and he has lots of gear that are explosives. Hello, Magic. Magic is a part of this now, so she wants to be here. So he was, with his limited offensive abilities, he was in really rough shape after having taken several concussion blasts from this guy. Cyghost had been dueling with a gifted named Rune, who had a wide range of powers that were randomly drawn from my pouch of runestones, because I got this cool gimmick and I wanted to use it. So I did. I gave him an arsenal of lots of little powers that he would randomly roll, but because they're random, he doesn't have selection, they were unreliable, which cut down drastically on the cost of those powers, which made them more powerful than they normally would have been, just because he couldn't reliably draw on any one of them, which was cool. And she was fighting him. He proved to be a kind of a tough opponent. Magic, stop. I'm sorry, we're going to have to put up with her for a bit. She always gets like this. So anyhow, Muscles first met up with Daytrip. Daytrip is a mind controller who is, the only powers he really demonstrated was trying to lock somebody down with a paralyzing attack by plunging them into their past. Muscles didn't like that very much, and when he escaped the grasp of that attack, he immediately turned around and knocked out Daytrip. This, of course, left Legion, who is able to discorporate into a large number of robotic beetles. He's also able to control devices, and he can generate an attack that can render an opponent unconscious. So he's got a few diverse abilities, but none of them terribly strong. Turns out, though, he's got a major weakness. If somebody can clear away his bug bits, even if that's not from a lethal attack, he can actually take serious damage from that, as Sentinel was soon to find out. The last one was the alpha of the group, the most powerful gifted the players have tangled with so far. His name is Mirror, and he appears to be a being of light, a humanoid that they couldn't see. He's too bright. He apparently had the ability to teleport in his friends. He had the ability to levitate them and reposition them. He can teleport, and as they found out, he's capable of teleporting across the globe. But he can teleport others. He can also do this with multiple people at a time. He can also heal, they found out, because at one point he ends up healing Rune and Daytrip. So all of this led for a kind of a bad situation. Because of a lack of teamwork and forethought, Rook used an EMP to try to disable all of the spider drones, which he feared, seeing that they were laced with explosive, that they might collapse the building or something dreadful. But he just did a global EMP because he botched his control. He's not very skilled with this attack. And it damaged all electronics everywhere within a 1,000-foot radius, which is most of the UN building, and also all of his comrades who are wearing powered armor, shut down. Circuits fried. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. That also included himself. So most of them crawled out of their armor so that they could fight better, move around better. This also meant they weren't protected against what the strongest opponents they've faced so far. Which meant that Rook was really having a problem with those concussion blasts from Salvo, who himself wasn't an outrageously powerful gifted, but the fact that he was able to score time and time again because Rook has very poor defenses and very poor offenses. So, offensive abilities. So he's kind of there. He had him pinned with his gravity effect, and he was shifting him around, but that wasn't doing a great deal to shut down Salvo. So they were kind of at a standstill, and Rook was steadily losing. Cyghost was attempting to put down mostly Rune, using a combination of Power Blast and Psychic attacks. Rune was resistant to a point, but that really didn't help when Muscles decided to come and clear him out. And just flattened him. Sent him flying across the room, smack down. Mirror's response was to heal both him and Daytrip, which roused them both. So Daytrip got off one more attack. Rune got to draw one more rune, which was a buff for Legion. Legion at this point was trying to run to the delegates. He was going to try to use the delegates as a bargaining chip. Sentinel started using his repulsor blast in this fight and hit Legion several times, knocking swaths of bugs out of him, which really hurt, to the point where he actually incapacitated Legion, which helped quite a bit. Also, Muscles was absolutely done with Rune, and he super leaped. His duplicate also super leaped, and they came crashing down with all 1,500 pounds of their weight on both Rune and Daytrip. That took them out of the fight. They were out cold. Neither of them managed to roll with it. As a matter of fact, I don't think I made a successful roll with a blow check. So they were both hospitalized. They just had some power left. Rune was very close to death. Daytrip wasn't so close because he hadn't gotten really to use his powers. So he was drawing. When you get knocked unconscious, you lose power when you take more damage. So they were in rough shape. Mirror then teleported them out. He evac'd his teammates, which shows he's got a conscience, and he cares about his teammates. He's not a cold-hearted killer, apparently. This is also the point where he started talking to them. He's able to have his voice carry across the room, across distances, and when Bulwark came up and basically tried to grapple with him, they knew that he could perfectly reflect physical damage, as so amply demonstrated when Muscles tried punching him and took the full damage of the blow up his own arm, shattering it. Yeah, his arm was pretty pulped. So Bulwark decided, I go dense, I grab him, we're good. Well, he tried grabbing him first, and his dazzling light effect stopped him from successfully grappling. He grabbed him successfully the next time, and Mirror looked at him and said, well, couldn't tell if he looked at him because he's really bright, but said, under different circumstances, we really wouldn't be fighting, and you'd probably even agree with me. That didn't help, but Bulwark tried to force him down, but his flight power, the amount that he can move, was not up to moving. It could not overcome Mirror's levitation ability. So instead, he just dropped his flight altogether and clung with all 1,500 pounds, which slowly levitated Mirror down. If Mirror had reinitialized his telekinesis, rather than having a split among all of his teammates, he could have held them both up easily, but he didn't have that luxury because he was too busy trying to reposition his teammates and try to keep everybody alive. So Salvo is being belligerent up on the top of up on the roof, and basically Rook was just sliding him around using his gravitational pull, which was so strong that he wasn't able to overcome it. It's actually interesting to figure out how that all works, because all you have to do is figure out how much of the mass relatively the character has, and then have him resist with his hand-to-hand damage roll, which is a raw expression of strength to try to fight the gravitational pull. It's interesting. Works actually fairly well, except it's a little capricious. But he was able to still, without hurting him further, he managed to pin him in place so that he couldn't go flying around. That did not stop him from throwing his airfoil concussion grenades, however, which he was pretty tired of by this point. Eventually, Rook just said, you know what, I'm just going to go and drop down the hole and get out, which gave Salvo enough time to pull out his strongest attack, which is a gadget he made with his invention, which is another bomb. This was a demolition-type charge that had penetrating armor resistance. Yeah, it's a nasty bomb. He threw it. Of course, Rook has very little defense, so he took it and boom! Knocked him across the roof. Also started him internally bleeding. This wasn't concussion. This was hurtful. But now he's coughing up blood and feeling really bad. On top of all the concussion damage he's got, his whole body is throbbing, his ears are ringing, he's in rough shape at this point. Even though he's got durability as a superpower, he took a hellacious beating. No other person in the group could probably take quite this much of a beating without some serious buffing, but he did. So Rook eventually finally uses his flight and gets out of the way of Salvo. Mirror teleports Salvo away. So now his entire... Oh, and Legion as well, who was in really rough shape. So, all of his team is gone. He is now down on the ground in the clutches of Bulwark, and Bulwark goes, hey, Muscles, throw me. He had a plan. The way he understood reflection to work is you can reflect and attack. His intention was to attack on two fronts. He wanted him to throw both himself, Bulwark, and Mirror into a wall, sandwiching Mirror in between the flying Bulwark and the wall, meaning the impact from Bulwark would be one part of the impact, and the impact of the wall would be the other one. The problem is he has perfect reflection, which works on all incoming kinetic damage, which means that damage that Bulwark would take from the collision, he took, and also all the damage that Mirror would have taken from that. So he took double the damage. Now, it was capped because, he's only got so many levels. There is a damage cap, but all of his resistances were considered first before the damage cap. So he was looking at a monstrous, almost 50 points of damage, which completely blew through his force field, blew through his durability, and still left him with a big chunk, which then we considered the 20 points off of. He was unconscious. He had already been beaten badly anyhow. So, he's hurt. Not dead, not quite dying, but badly, badly injured. The wall that they crashed into also took double damage, reflecting the impact of Mirror with the wall. So the wall took the damage and then all the force that Mirror would provoke. So the wall exploded outward. And because he threw him towards the front, if you've ever seen the United Nations building, there's a beautiful glass facade facing the outside, that all shattered. As Muscles' throw took them through the wall, through the glass, and about 350 feet beyond into the plaza in front of the United Nations. And Bulwark just plop, dropped it after that. Mirror stood up. Mirror was not hurt by this. They're all really looking at this like, oh, wow. And Bulwark didn't try rolling with it. He wanted to do maximum impact on this to try his best to take Mirror down. Was an interesting strategy and a sacrifice attack. Unfortunately, didn't work for him. So he drops. So at this point, Rook is pretty much out of the fight. He's flying into the building, uses his powers to get a layout of the UN building, and knows they have an emergency surgery just in case one of the delegates falls ill or there's an attack on the building that causes someone to get injured. There is always a highly trained doctor there as well, so he leaves the battle to go off and get healed because he is dying from internal injuries. So he's out. Sygos decides that she doesn't want to risk doing anything else to Mirror while he's still in the room, so she flies out to go and try to help. She goes out to try to help Rook. She ends up taking a shot at Salvo, misses, before Salvo is teleported away. As Mirror is flown out into the plaza, she throws a Mind Blast at him, which hits and does damage. His resistance does not resist psychic attacks. Could be interesting. Also, he doesn't seem to have resistance to mental communication. His talking thing is interesting. They can't see his mouth move because he's glowing white body. But she uses her telepathy to start talking to him, and they have a conversation in the middle of this fight. And he says, all right, I know you're all beat up, and I know I can beat all of you, but I really don't need to accomplish my goals. This attack has pretty much proven what I wanted to do. My intention was to be a voice throughout the world saying that all your systems that you have in place are wrong and bad. People suffer and die because of how bad your systems are. And now there are people with the power to come through and fix humanity. And I'm going to do that. I have the power to do that, and I will use it. And she wasn't able to get through to him. But she knows he's not a bloodthirsty monster. He's just trying to get something accomplished. How they feel about that varies. But the fact that he is still anonymous and he is chillingly kind of detached emotionally, almost a purely logical bent that is directed in this particular way, he says, but I don't have to continue this fight. I'll leave. I don't wish any harm to your friends. As a matter of fact, as an interesting token, he teleported Bulwark to the hospital, knowing that he was badly injured. He didn't want to see him die. He thought he fought valiantly, which he did. So he went to Mercy Hospital in Washington, or in New York. So, at this point, the group is kind of, do we want to keep pressing this fight? Sygos didn't. She knew she'd scored with an attack, but if she kept fighting, he might have to fight back, and she didn't know if she wanted to do that. Muscles had the badly broken arm, and was one hit away from going down. As a matter of fact, Salvo was, I forgot that I teleported him. He would have basically popped him, but nope, poof, he vanished. Rook was looking for a hospital, and Sentinel had basically finished off Legion as his last action, then stood in front of the doors of the United Nations, being the Sentinel, making sure Mir didn't come back. And if he had tried, might have gotten interesting. Who knows? But he vanished. The group licked their wounds. Rook made it down into the surgery with the help of 2 security guards, and eventually a fine and charming doctor was able to sedate him and perform life-saving surgery upon him. And a couple of times the group had checked in on the delegates who had all been barricaded inside the room. Muscles, of course, ripped the door off, but the door really was vestigial. It wouldn't have stopped any of the combatants from getting in one way or the other. Legion would have crawled under in his beetle forms, or the others would probably have blasted the way through or forced somebody to open the door for them. So, yeah, it really didn't matter. One of the things that Mir taunted them with, though, was that looking at the building, which heavily damaged, he's like, neither myself nor any of my comrades did any of that damage. Everything that you see there is because of you. Poof. And the group's like, yeah, because I was actually rolling damages that they were doing from the various impacts, missed attacks, a whole wall collapsing, going through ceilings. It was kind of fun, actually. Yeah, net total, they did millions and millions of dollars of damage to this building. And of course, it being the United Nations building, it's an iconic building that's you don't just fix by a little bit of plaster and stuff. So this is, yeah, this is a big, big, big fight. So the bad guys got away, technically. Everybody survived, although they were in rough shape. And they kind of watched from a distance while the battle suit warriors versus the gifted that Veronica and others had kind of put into place to stop them played out. And they did get to see something interesting. It appeared, there was pretty tangible evidence, that Clayton's Alpha group, the various gifted that he had collected to replace the group, well, they were involved in the fight, and they were fighting against the battle-suited soldiers. So, this was unexpected and adds a new wrinkle to what's going on. What game is he playing? They don't know. Eventually, they were evac'd. Folks got medical attention as they needed, although they were all looking forward to getting back to the nest where, what's her name? Dr. Elliot is able to use her healing abilities to slowly patch them up. Also, they have a lot of experience that they wanted to spend too. And a couple of things that they took away from this, I hope they took away from it. When they got back, Veronica's denoted from their debriefing, the various abilities that were used against them. And said one thing, many of them were using gadgets. They had used their inventing points. Most of you guys don't. Including, all these various people. The only exception to that really was Bulwark, who was using the inventing points to add ad hoc powers to his already impressive collection of abilities. So I, again, kind of reminded them, this is an ability that is available for all of you. If you have holes, you don't feel like you can do something, here's your opportunity. That's when questions like, can I make a plasma gun? Yeah, that's an energy attack. Fairly simple gadget for you to make. I mean, it's not simple, but it's something you can do, etc., etc., etc. So they'll be a little bit better equipped the next thing that they get to do. So we stopped halfway through the debriefing. Two people had to leave early, as is going to kind of be a regular thing. So there's going to be more intel to be dredged out of this. Of course, there's going to be different things that come about from this fight. But the group got to lick their wounds. They're all pretty much healed back. And They're getting their armor retooled so that the damaged circuitry from the amps are fixed. And they're all interested, very, very interested, in getting their gear resistant to electromagnetic pulses, because it seems unlikely that Rook is not going to use that ability again. Kind of one of the things he enjoys doing. So, until next time, true believers, that's where we left the game, and we will pick up from there next time in Mighty Protectors! So until that next time, roll some dice, play some games, have some fun, stay safe, and thanks for watching. Farewell.